predatory and animalistic, but at the same time, they have our mermaids anyway have a lot of intelligence and emotions in their way, which is very different from humans. So they get to know each other's worlds and what they find strange about that. And then, of course, the aim of the story, or I think anyway, the morale of it all is that you much more find a common ground if you're willing to look, if you're willing to love, if you're willing to be open, than if you're, immediately putting up the enemy walls or you are lesser than me and I take advantage of you perspective.
Right.
Which is very applicable for today's problems, I think.
Yeah. So you mean like you bring in a bit of vulnerability in there
I feel like, time and time again in our show, I mean, of course, the thrill is finding out about this new, because it's a sci-fi, so, with, scientific fantasy, and it's very, there's not so much magic as there is, the main characters are marine biologists, and some of the bigger voices in it are science or the military or doctors, or, so they have their own theories about it. But then at the same time, there's spirituality and heart, because you're talking about another culture almost, and those elements sort of play together. But then, of course, in the most magical setting, which is underwater, which hasn't been done before, at least not in a television. I mean, you have H2O, which is a gorgeous show, but again is more leaning towards the Little Mermaid interpretations of, beautiful and lovely and smooth. And here the transformation is painful. The way our mermaids change from water creatures to land creatures is very painful. We're actually talking about evolution in the space of, a minute. If you think about birth, or if you think about, any animal regrowing a limb or a tail, it doesn't happen sort of very easily with twinkly lights and as much as we'd wish that. It's life is raw, and that take is more the one that our show approached, which is cool. It's different.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's an interesting point too, because you talk about H2O, which I think is an Australian mermaid kind of show. And I think there's a lot of kind of shows that are made for, I guess, kind of kids or teenagers, with that mermaid sort of thing in mind. Whereas this is it's a lot more adult, isn't it? I mean, there's
lot
nudity
more adult, which I think there is, I think there's such room for it. I mean, if you think of the fascination there's been, I mean, we as a whole, throughout history, we love mythologies. We love the power it has to tell stories about humanity through creatures. And then, of course, the other aspect is it was real or not. But let's just stick with the power of using myths and mythological characters. I mean, for instance, years ago, it was vampires. In every which way they were explored, from good to bad to the stereotypical to the new. Same, the popularity of zombies, werewolves. These fascinate us so much. And then I always found it so baffling. There's such scope for the underwater, the mermaid world, the sirens, all that world that has so much potential. So I was so happy that there's a show like Siren who's at least throwing another idea on the the plate there.
Well, I think the thing that really impressed me about the show was how much they tried to do in a practical sense. A lot of these shows, if they do underwater scenes, they'll either do it, dry for wet, which means shooting it dry and then making it look like it's wet.
Which doesn't work really.
No, I mean, when it does work, it's so much money to make it work.
It's so much money to make it work. Yeah. I feel like, I've spent so many hours on the underwater set now. I mean, after all those years, and I 100% believe that the practical way is the best, as in the hands-on way, the really doing it way, delivers the best results. And yes, it's still expensive, but my God, the more you do it, and especially if you work with a great team, which we did in Siren, and every year we became closer and family. And it's like anything, right? You spend long time on it and you perfect and you find quicker ways and better ways and easier ways. Even if you look at our